Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The Missoula Community Center buzzed with warmth, a stark contrast to the howling blizzard outside where snow swirled like a vengeful ghost across the Bitterroot Valley. String lights draped the rafters, casting a golden glow over folding tables piled with soul food, cornbread collards and peach cobbler, while a local R&B band strummed a slow Alicia Keys cover, the bass humming through the wooden floor. Lena Harper stood near the stage, her deep purple sweater hugging her curves, her braids pulled into a loose bun, her brown skin catching the light. At 35, she was a doctor who'd rebuilt herself in this quiet Montana town, a volunteer at the local clinic, a survivor of a past that still haunted her. But tonight at this charity event for free heart screenings, her hands trembled, her heart pounding like a drum. She scanned the crowd, locals, volunteers, kids chasing each other with paper snowflakes, and froze when her eyes landed on a boy in the corner, his gray-blue eyes bright, his soft brown curls bouncing as he colored a poster. Ezra, her 4-year-old son, her everything. Those eyes, though, they weren't hers. They were his father's. A man she'd left behind 5 years ago. A man she'd never stopped loving no matter how hard she tried. Her throat tightened, the silver ring on her finger, a cheap Missoula keepsake burning against her skin. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from her mom. Marla, Lena, you can't keep hiding in Montana. Caleb's waiting in Minneapolis. Bring Ezra home. Lena sighed, shoving the phone away. Marla meant well, but her push for Dr. Caleb Morris, Lena's med school brother, a good man with a steady heart, was a weight she couldn't carry. Caleb was safe, solid, but he didn't spark her fire, didn't make her question everything like Elliot Vance had. And now, as the band's melody curled around her, she felt him, before she saw him. A presence. A storm stepping through the center's doors. Elliot. Vance stood there, his tailored coat dusted with snow, his dark hair mussed, his hazel eyes, those damn eyes locking on hers like a missile. The room faded, the music a distant hum, and Lena's breath caught her heart racing. 5 years since she'd left him in that Missoula clinic. 5 years since she'd run from his world of wealth and power, from the truth she carried. He was here, and he was staring at her son. "Lena," he said, his voice low, rough, cutting through the crowd's chatter as he crossed the room, his boots scuffing the floor. "We need to talk." Her jaw tightened, her eyes flicking to Ezra, who looked up curious. "No cap, Vance," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "You don't get to walk in here and call shots. Not after 5 years. His gaze softened, but his eyes darted to Ezra, a flicker of recognition of pain. "He's mine, isn't he?" he said, his voice barely a whisper, his hands clenching at his sides. "Our son." The world tilted, the band's bass a heartbeat in her chest, and Lena's knees buckled, the truth she'd buried clawing its way out. 5 years ago, Missoula, Montana. The blizzard had roared into the Bitterroot Valley like a beast, snow piling high, the wind screaming through the pines. Lena was alone at the community clinic, the fluorescent lights flickering, the heater rattling against the cold. She'd come to Missoula to escape New York's spotlight, the headlines that branded her a failure after a surgery gone wrong, the whispers that a black woman didn't belong in the OR. At 30, she was rebuilding, volunteering where no one knew her name, where she could heal without judgment. The clinic's door burst open, a gust of snow swirling in, and a man stumbled through his coat, soaked blood trickling from his forehead, his arm limp. "Help!" he gasped, his hazel eyes wild, and Lena sprang into action, her training kicking in. She guided him to a cot, her hands steady as she cleaned the wound, checked his vitals, the antiseptics bite sharp in the air. His car had skidded off the road. He said his voice rough, his gaze locked on her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered. "You're gonna be fine," she said, her voice calm, her fingers brushing his skin as she bandaged his arm. "Just stay with me." He nodded, his eyes softening, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Name's Elliot," he said, his drawl warm despite the pain. "And you're something else." "Doc." She snorted, her lips twitching, but her heart kicked up a notch. "Keep it real, man," she said, her tone teasing. "You're concussed, not charming." He chuckled, the sound low rolling, sending a shiver she didn't want to admit. Over the next few days, as the storm raged, Lena cared for him, their late-night talks under the clinic's dim lights, weaving a connection she hadn't expected. The fireplace crackled, the snow piling outside, and Elliot listened as she shared her past, the surgery that cost a patient's life, the media's witch hunt, the way it broke her. "Why stay here?" he asked one night, his eyes sharp following her as she adjusted his IV. "You're too good for this place, Lena." She smiled, sad and soft, her gaze distant. "No pressure here," she said, her voice quiet. "No headlines calling me a failure. Just people who need me." He reached for her hand, his touch warm, steady, and she didn't pull away, her heart racing. "You're no failure," he said, his voice low, fierce. "You're fire." The air thickened, the fire's glow, painting their skin in gold, and Lena felt it, a pull, a spark. She leaned closer, or maybe he did, and their lips met a soft collision that ignited into fire. The kiss was hot, urgent, tasting of antiseptic and snow, the storm's howl blending with their breaths. Her hands slid up his chest, feeling his heartbeat while his fingers tangled in her braids, pulling her closer. The cot creaked, the clinic's quiet wrapping around them, and she melted, her body aching. The world narrowing to his touch, his cedar and soap scent, the way he whispered her name. They stumbled to a back room, the door clicking shut, his hands sliding under her sweater, tracing her spine. Each touch a spark. "Lena," he breathed, his voice rough, reverent, and she arched into him, her nails digging into his shoulders, the storm's rhythm matching their pulse. It could have gone further, could have burned them both, but fear her past the headlines, the world outside clawed its way back. She pulled away, her chest heaving, her lips tingling. "We can't," she gasped, stepping back, her eyes wet. It's a mistake." Elliot's breath was ragged, his eyes dark, but soft. "Ain't no mistake," he said, his voice steady. "You feel this too, Lena?" She shook her head, panic rising, and fled to the front room, her heart a mess. The next day she found his business card in his coat. Elliot Vance, CEO, Vance Medical Technologies, and a voicemail from Vanessa Langston, his fiancée, cold and demanding. Lena's world crumbled. He wasn't just a man. He was a storm, one she couldn't weather. She wrote a letter, her hands shaking. "Elliot, I'm sorry. We don't belong together. Don't look for me." She left before dawn, the snow swallowing her tracks, her heart breaking with every step. Present day, Missoula. The community center's warmth felt suffocating as Lena faced Elliot. His words, "He's my son," hanging heavy. The R&B band's melody pulsed the crowd's chatter, a distant hum, and Lena's eyes darted to Ezra, who smiled at her oblivious. "Elliot," she said, her voice trembling, her hand brushing her stomach where he'd once been aflutter. "You don't get to walk in here and claim him. Not after everything." His jaw tightened, his eyes glistening, but his voice was steady. "I didn't know, Lena," he said, stepping closer, his cedar scent hitting her like a memory. "You left me, ran without a word. I've been searching for you 5 years every damn day, and now I find him. Our son." Her throat burned, tears prickling the ring on her finger, a vow she'd broken. "I had to," she said, her voice breaking, her gaze meeting his. "You're a CEO, Elliot with a fiancé. A world I don't fit in. I was the white coat killer in New York, remember? They tore me apart for one mistake. I couldn't let that touch him." His face softened, his hand reaching for hers, but she stepped back, her heart racing. "You think I'd let that happen?" he said, his voice low, fierce. "I'd burn it all down for you, Lena. For him." The band's bass thumped the lights, flickering, and Lena felt it, a pull, a fire she'd buried. Ezra ran over his gray-blue eyes, bright, his voice small. "Mama, who's this?" he asked, and Lena's heart shattered, the truth too big to hold. She knelt, her hand on his cheek, her voice trembling. "Ezra," she set her eyes on Elliot. This is your dad." Elliot's breath caught his eyes, wet, his hand trembling as he knelt beside her. "Hey, Ezra," he said, his voice thick, his smile soft. "I've been looking for you." Ezra tilted his head, curious, and Lena's tears fell. The crowd fading, the music a heartbeat. She stood, her voice shaking. "I love you, Elliot," she said. Her gaze locked on his. "But I can't do this. Not yet." She grabbed Ezra's hand, her sneakers scuffing the floor, and fled into the blizzard, the snow swallowing her tears. Elliot's shadow lingered, his voice a whisper in her mind, and she knew this wasn't over. The next morning, Lena sat in a Missoula cafe, the scent of roasted coffee, sharp Ezra coloring beside her. Her phone buzzed a text from Dr. Mia Torres, her clinic partner. "Girl Vance is tearing up the town looking for you. Spill the tea." "What's good?" Lena's lips twitched, but her heart was heavy. Another text from Marla Lena. "Bring Ezra home. Caleb's waiting." Lena sighed, her eyes on the ring. Caleb was home, but Elliot was fire, and she wasn't sure she could outrun it. A final text from Jada King, a journalist she'd met in New York. "Lena, I've got dirt on Vance's past. Meet me in St. Louis. You need the truth." Lena's stomach knotted. Jada's words a lifeline or a trap. She booked a bus to St. Louis, her resolve shaky, the ring, a quiet vow. Elliot was a storm, but Ezra was her world, and she'd fight for him even if it meant facing the man she loved. Thank you for diving into the fiery start of Rhythm of the Storm. If Lena and Elliot's reunion sparked something in you, hit that like button, subscribe to Soul Stories, and drop a comment to share your thoughts. Can their love survive the storm ahead? Join our community to find out, and let's spread the heat of love and hope together. Beale Street pulsed under St. Louis' night sky, a riot of neon signs and blues riffs spilling from bars, the air thick with the smoky tang of barbecue and the faint salt of the Mississippi River. Lena Harper stood outside a makeshift clinic tucked off the main drag, her navy hoodie loose over her jeans, her braids pulled into a messy bun, her deep brown skin catching the glow of a flickering street lamp. At 35, she was a doctor who'd carved out a quiet life in Missoula, but now, weeks after fleeing that charity event, and Elliot Vance's piercing gaze, she was unraveling her heart, a tangle of love and fear. The silver ring on her finger, a cheap Missoula trinket, felt like a brand, a reminder of the man she'd left behind, the son they shared and the truth she'd buried. Ezra, her 4-year-old, was safe with a sitter tonight, his gray-blue eyes, Elliot's eyes haunting her every time she looked at him. She'd run to St. Louis to escape to work at this pop-up clinic, serving the city's underserved, but the weight of her secret was crushing her. She'd told Elliot that Ezra was his son, then bolted, scared of his world wealth, power, a fiancée named Vanessa Langston, and her own past, the headlines that once branded her a failure. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her mom. "Marla Lena, you can't keep running. Ezra needs a home, and Caleb's waiting in Minneapolis. Come back. Lena's jaw tightened. The words, a familiar ache. Marla wanted her to settle with Dr. Caleb Morris, her med school brother, a black doctor who got the struggle, who'd always been her rock. But Caleb didn't spark her fire, didn't make her heart race like Elliot did, and that truth scared her more than any tabloid. She was locking the clinic's door when a voice cut through the night, warm and steady. Yo, Lena, you look like you're carrying the whole damn gateway arch. Lena turned, her lips twitching, as Dr. Caleb Morris leaned against a street lamp, his leather jacket open, his dark eyes soft with concern. He'd flown in from Minneapolis, unannounced his presence, a comfort she didn't deserve. Keep it real, Caleb, she said, her voice teasing but tired. I'm just trying to survive this shift. He chuckled, the sound low grounding, but his gaze was sharp, clocking her vibe. Nah, sis, you're dodging, he said, stepping closer. His cedar and coffee scent. Familiar. Spill the tea. What's got you out here in St. Louis? Ghosting everybody. Lena's throat burned her hand, brushing the ring. The weight of Ezra's truth too heavy. Just needed a breather. She lied, her eyes on the neon signs, the blues riff curling through the air like a memory. Caleb's brow raised, unconvinced. A breather from what? Or who? His voice was gentle, but the question cut deep, and Lena looked away, the Mississippi's distant hum filling the silence. The clinic was a cramped trailer parked off Beale, its walls lined with donated supplies, the air sharp with antiseptic and the faint sweetness of cornbread from a nearby food truck. Lena sat at a folding table charting patient files, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Caleb sprawled in a chair across from her, his boots propped up, his eyes never leaving her. The blues from Beale Street seeped through the thin walls, a slow, soulful tune that made Lena's chest ache. You gonna tell me about Missoula, or do I gotta drag it out? Caleb said, his voice low, teasing but laced with worry. Her advance showed up, turned your world upside down. What's good? Lena's pen stilled her heart, kicking up a notch. She'd told Caleb bits and pieces. Elliot's crashed their nights in the clinic, but not the whole truth, not about Ezra. It's complicated, she said, her voice thin, her eyes on the chart. He's Ezra's dad. Caleb's boots hit the floor, his eyes widening, shock giving way to something softer, understanding, maybe, or pain. Damn, Lena, he said, leaning forward, his voice gentle. You've been carrying that alone all this time. Why didn't you tell me? Her throat burned, tears prickling the ring on her finger heavy. I was scared, she said, her voice trembling. Scared of his world, money, power, some fiancée named Vanessa. Scared of mine. New York, the headlines, the way they tore me apart for one mistake, I couldn't let that touch Ezra. Caleb nodded, his hand brushing hers, warm and steady. You're the strongest woman I know, he said, his voice low, raw. But you don't gotta do this solo. I've always got your back, Lena. Always. Her heart ached, guilt twisting her gut. Caleb had loved her once, maybe still did, but she couldn't give him what he deserved. She pulled her hand back, her eyes on the table. The blues riff, a mournful echo. Her phone buzzed, a video call from Dr. Mia Torres, her Missoula partner. Yo, Harper. Mia's face popped up, her dark curls bouncing, her grin wide. You hiding in St. Louis now? Spill the tea, girl. Her advance is tearing up Montana looking for you. Lena forced a smile. Mia's energy a lifeline, but Caleb's gaze was heavy, and she felt exposed. Just working, she said, her voice too quick. No drama here. Mia snorted, her eyes narrowing. Uh-huh. Keep it 100. Sis, you're glowing, but you look like you're running from a ghost. Call me later, okay? I need the full story. She hung up, leaving Lena with Caleb's quiet scrutiny. Lena, he said, his voice soft, searching. You love him, don't you, Vance? She froze her breath, catching the truth too big to hide. I don't know, she whispered, her eyes wet. I want to, but I'm scared, Caleb. Scared he'll break us. He nodded, his smile, sad but steady. Love's a risk, he said, his voice firm. But you're fire, Lena. Don't let fear put you out. The next night, Lena met Jada King at a dive bar on Beale, its walls plastered with blues posters, the air thick with beer and fried pickles. The jukebox played a Nina Simone track, all soul and ache, its bass vibrating through the sticky floor. Jada was sharp locks swept into a high bun, leather jacket, eyes that saw too much. She slid a folder across the table, her voice low. Elliot Vance ain't just a CEO, Jada said, her tone blunt. Vance Medical Technologies was his dream, innovative gear, affordable care. His partner, Malcolm Reed, tanked it with a shady deal, sold patents to a rival. Elliot took the fall, lost everything. He's not just a suit, Lena. He's a fighter like you. Lena's heart sank, her fingers tracing the folder's edge, emails and contracts spilling out. Signed Elliot Vance. Why tell me this? She asked, her voice tight, the jukebox's melody wrapping around her like a ghost. Jada leaned back, her eyes narrowing. 'Cause you're in deep with him, she said, her voice sharp, and Vanessa Langston's sniffing around, digging into your past. She's got media connections, Lena. You need to know who you're dealing with before she drags you back to New York. Lena's stomach twisted, the ring on her finger, heavy. She'd run from Elliot, from the truth about Ezra, but Jada's words painted a man who'd fought, lost, and rebuilt just like her. She thought of his eyes in Missoula, the pain she'd caused, and her resolve cracked. She left the bar, the St. Louis rain, a soft drum beat, the neon lights blurring through her tears. Back at her rented room, she sat by the window, the Mississippi's hum, a quiet comfort, her notebook open. She wrote her pen, flying lyrics spilling out. In the rain, I hear you in the night. I know. The words were for her, for Ezra, but they were for Elliot too, the man she loved despite everything. Sleep came hard, and when it did, she dreamed of Missoula. The clinic, the blizzard. Elliot's lips on hers, his hands tracing her spine, the snow's howl, a distant pulse. Lena, he'd whispered, his voice rough, and she'd melted her body, pressing against his, the fire's glow like a vow. In the dream, she didn't run, and when she woke, her cheeks were wet, her heart a storm. The next morning, Lena stood by the Mississippi, the river's glint cold under the gray sky. Ezra's hand in hers, Caleb joined them, his presence steady, but his eyes held a question. You're not staying, are you? He said, his voice soft, his hand brushing her shoulder. Lena shook her head, her eyes on the water, the ring, a quiet weight. I gotta face this, she said, her voice trembling. Elliot. Ezra, my past. I can't keep running. Caleb nodded, his smile, sad but proud. You're fire, Lena, he said, his voice firm. Go burn bright. Her phone buzzed, a text from Jada. Vance is in Asheville for a medical conference. Vanessa's on his tail. Get there. Lena's heart raced, the Mississippi's hum, a call to action. She booked a bus to Asheville, her resolve stealing the ring, a vow she wasn't ready to break. Elliot was a storm, but she was fire, and she'd face him for Ezra, for herself, for the love she couldn't outrun. Asheville's Blue Ridge Mountains loomed like ancient guardians, their peaks kissed by the golden hues of a late autumn sunset, the air crisp with the scent of pine and wood smoke. Lena Harper stood outside the conference center downtown, her tailored blazer sharp over jeans, her braids swept into a high bun, her deep brown skin catching the fading light. At 35, she was a doctor who'd rebuilt herself from the ashes of a New York scandal. But now, in this bohemian city, her hands trembled. Her heart, a drumbeat of fear and want. The silver ring on her finger. A cheap Missoula trinket burned against her skin. A reminder of Elliot Vance. The man she'd loved left and couldn't outrun. The medical conference was a big deal. Innovations in community healthcare, a chance to pitch her free clinic model. But Lena wasn't here for the spotlight. She'd come to Asheville chasing Jada King's text. Vance is here, Vanessa's on his tail. Get the truth. Jada, a sharp-eyed journalist, had sent files on Elliot's past. A company betrayal, a fight to rebuild cracking Lena's defenses. She loved him. God help her. But the secret she carried was heavier than ever. Weeks ago in St. Louis, she'd realized she was pregnant a spark from that blizzard night in Missoula, and the weight of it, Elliot's child, Ezra's sibling, was a storm she couldn't weather alone. Her phone buzzed a text from her mom. Marla, Lena, Ezra's asking for you. Caleb's ready to step up. Stop running. Lena's jaw tightened. Marla's words, a familiar sting. Caleb Morris, her med school brother, was a good man. A black doctor who'd always had her back, but he didn't set her soul ablaze like Elliot did. She pocketed the phone. Her eyes on the conference center's glass doors, where Elliot's shadow loomed. His presence a pull she couldn't shake. Inside, the hall buzzed with doctors and execs, the air sharp with coffee and ambition, a folk band's banjo riff drifting from a nearby lounge. Lena was scanning her notes when a voice stopped her, low and rough like a chord. Struck deep. Lena, she froze, her heart lurching as Elliot Vance stepped into her path, his tailored suit hugging his frame, his hazel eyes raw, searching his dark hair mussed like he'd run through the mountains to find her. Elliot, she said, her voice trembling, her clipboard a shield. What are you doing here? He stepped closer, his cedar and leather scent hitting her like a memory. His gaze locked on hers. You ran, Lena, he said, his voice breaking, his hands clenching at his sides. Left me with a letter. A son I didn't know about. You think I'm just gonna let that slide? Her throat burned the ring on her finger. A vow she'd broken. Keep it 100. Vance? She said, her voice sharp but shaky. You're a CEO, with a fiancé. A world. I don't fit in. I had to protect Ezra. His eyes darkened. Pain flickering, but his voice was fierce. Protect him from me, he said, stepping closer, the crowd fading. I'd burn it all down for you, Lena. For him, you don't get to decide what I can handle. The banjo riff pulsed the hall's lights, casting shadows across his jaw, and Lena felt it a spark, a fire she'd buried. She wanted to believe him, but fear her past, his world, the baby she carried, held her back. The Gray Eagle, a dive bar off Asheville's cobblestone streets, was alive with the twang of folk music and the clink of beer bottles, the air thick with fried pickles and cedar. Lena sat at a corner table, her notebook open, her pen, scratching lyrics that felt like pieces of her soul. In the dusk. I find me in the dark. I glow. Ezra was with a sitter, safe, but his gray-blue eyes. Elliot's eyes haunted her, and the baby inside her was a secret she couldn't keep much longer. Dr. Mia Torres slid into the seat across from her, her dark curls bouncing, her grin wicked. Spill the tea, Harper, Mia said, her voice teasing her, Puerto Rican accent. Warm. Saw you dodging Vance at the conference. What's good? Lena forced a smile. Mia's energy a lifeline, but her heart was heavy. Just work, she lied, her eyes on the notebook. the folk band's melody curling around her like a memory. Mia snorted, unconvinced. Uh-huh. Keep it real, sis. You're glowing, but you look like you're running from a ghost. That man's got you shook. Lena's lips twitched, but before she could deflect, a shadow crossed the table. Dr. Caleb Morris stood there, his leather jacket open, his dark eyes soft but sharp. "Yo, Lena," he said, his voice warm. "Thought I'd find you here. You good?" Her throat tightened, guilt twisting her gut. Caleb had followed her from St. Louis, his presence a comfort she didn't deserve. "I'm straight," she said, her voice thin, but Caleb's raised brow called her bluff, and Mia's smirk didn't help. "Straight, huh?" Mia said, leaning back, her eyes flicking to Caleb. "Then why's Vance out here tearing up Asheville looking for you? Spill, girl." Lena's heart raced the ring on her finger, burning. She opened her mouth, but a new voice cut through, low and fierce. "She doesn't need to spill anything." Elliot stood there, his suit jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his hazel eyes blazing. The bar's folk music pulsed the neon lights, painting his skin in blues and golds, and Lena's breath caught the air thick with tension. Caleb stiffened his hand on Lena's shoulder, a silent claim, and Mia's grin widened. "Sensing drama." "Vance," Lena said, her voice trembling, standing to face him. "This ain't the place. It's the only place," he said, stepping closer, his voice raw. "You ran. Lena told me. Ezra's mine, then ghosted. I'm not letting you slip away again." Her heart pounded, the crowd fading the banjo riff, a heartbeat in her chest. "You don't get it," she said, her voice breaking, her eyes locked on his. "Your world money power. Vanessa, it'll destroy us. I can't let Ezra or—" She stopped, her hand brushing her stomach, the secret too big to hold. Elliot's eyes widened, his gaze dropping to her hand. Shock giving way to something deeper. Hope, maybe, or fear. "You're pregnant," he said, his voice barely a whisper, his hands clenching. "Mine." The bar's neon flickered, the music swelling, and Lena's resolve cracked fear and love warring in her chest. "No," she lied, her voice shaking the words, a desperate shield. "It's Caleb's." Caleb's hand dropped, his eyes wide, but he didn't contradict her. His silence a gift she didn't deserve. Elliot's face crumpled, pain etching his features, his voice low, broken. "You're lying," he said, stepping closer, his cedar scent wrapping around her. "I know you, Lena. This," he gestured between them, his voice cracking. "This ain't over." He turned and walked out, the bar's door slamming, leaving Lena trembling, her tears falling. Caleb's steady presence, a weight she couldn't bear. Later that night, Lena sat in her Asheville motel room, the Blue Ridge Mountains dark beyond the window, the air heavy with rain and regret. Her notebook lay open, lyrics unfinished, the ring on her finger, a quiet vow. She'd lied to protect herself, to keep Elliot at arm's length, but the pain in his eyes haunted her, a wound she'd carved. Her phone buzzed, a text from Jada King. "Check your email. Proof Vance cleaned up his company's mess. He's not who you think." Lena opened her laptop, her hands shaking, and found Jada's files, legal docs, emails, proof. Elliot had fought to right his company's wrongs, to rebuild from betrayal. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying, and that cracked her open wider than his kiss. A knock came. Dr. Mia Torres, her eyes soft but fierce. "Lena, you gotta stop running," Mia said, stepping inside, her voice warm. "I lost my shot at a big hospital 'cause I called out their BS. You're fire, girl. Don't let fear dim you." Lena nodded, her throat burning, Mia's words echoing Caleb's. Her phone buzzed again, Marla, unyielding Lena. Ezra needs you home. Caleb's family. Lena's heart sank, but Jada's files burned in her mind and Elliot's face. His pain, his love wouldn't let go. She booked a bus to Savannah, her resolve shaky the ring, a vow she couldn't break. Elliot was a storm, but she was fire, and she'd face him for Ezra, for the baby, for the love she couldn't outrun. Asheville had cracked her open, but Savannah would test her, and Lena was ready to burn Forsyth. Park glowed under Savannah's twilight, its ancient oaks dripping with Spanish moss, the air sweet with magnolia, and the smoky tang of grilled shrimp from a nearby food truck. The community health fair buzzed with life kids chasing glow sticks, elders swapping stories over sweet tea, a jazz band saxophone weaving through the crowd like a velvet thread. Lena Harper stood by a clinic tent, her navy sundress soft against her skin, her braids loose, her deep brown skin catching the golden light of string lanterns. At 35, she was a doctor who'd rebuilt herself in this coastal city, a volunteer at a community clinic, a mother to Ezra, her 4-year-old son. But tonight her hands trembled, her heart a drumbeat of fear and longing. The silver ring on her finger, a Missoula trinket, felt heavier than ever, a reminder of Elliot Vance, the man she'd loved, left, and lied to in Asheville. She'd told him her unborn child was Caleb's, a desperate shield to protect Ezra and the baby from his world of wealth power, and a fiancée named Vanessa Langston. Jada King's files, proof Elliot had fought to right his company's wrongs, had cracked her open, but fear still held her back, her past as the white coat killer in New York. The headlines that tore her apart for one failed surgery loomed like a ghost. She couldn't let that touch her children. Ezra ran through the grass, his gray-blue eyes, Elliot's eyes sparkling as he clutched a balloon, his laughter a lifeline. Lena's phone buzzed, a text from her mom. Marla, Lena, Ezra deserves a real family. Caleb's in Minneapolis, ready. Stop this foolishness. Lena's jaw tightened. Marla's words, a familiar ache. Caleb Morris, her med school brother, was a good man, but he didn't burn through her like Elliot did. And that truth was a storm she couldn't outrun. She was handing out clinic flyers when a shadow crossed her path. Dr. Caleb Morris, his leather jacket open, his dark eyes soft but sharp. "Yo, Lena," he said, his voice warm, his Minneapolis drawl steady. "Thought I'd find you here. You good?" Lena forced a smile. Caleb's presence, a comfort she didn't deserve. "Keep it real, Caleb," she said, her voice teasing but tired. "Just trying to keep the clinic funded." "What you doing in Savannah?" He chuckled, his hand brushing her arm, his gaze searching. "Checking on you," he said, his voice low. "Heard Vance is in town, tearing up the South, looking for you. Spill the tea, sis. What's good?" Her heart raced, the ring burning, but before she could answer, a voice cut through low and fierce. "She doesn't owe you an explanation. Morris. Elliot." Vance stood there, his tailored jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his hazel eyes blazing under the lanterns. The jazz band's saxophone hummed, the crowd's chatter fading, and Lena's breath caught the air thick with tension. Caleb stiffened his hand, lingering on her arm, and Ezra looked up, his balloon, bobbing his eyes, curious. "Vance," Lena said, her voice trembling, stepping forward, her sundress swaying. "This ain't the place. It's the only place," Elliot said, his voice raw, his cedar and leather scent hitting her like a memory. "You lied to me, Lena, in Asheville. That baby, it's mine, isn't it?" Her throat burned, her hand brushing her stomach, the secret too big to hold. The crowd blurred the lanterns, casting shadows across his jaw, and Lena's world tilted the truth, clawing its way out. The clinic tent was a quiet refuge, its canvas walls muffling the fair's hum, the air heavy with antiseptic and magnolia from the park. Lena sat on a folding chair, Ezra playing nearby with a toy truck, his gray-blue eyes bright. Elliot stood across from her. His hands clenched, his gaze locked on their son, pain and love warring in his eyes. "Lena," he said, his voice low, breaking, "you can't keep running. Ezra's mine. This baby." His eyes dropped to her stomach, his voice trembling. "It's ours. Why are you shutting me out?" Her tears fell, the ring on her finger, a broken vow. "Keep it 100. "Elliot," she said, her voice shaking, her eyes meeting his. "Your world, money. Vanessa, your dad. It'll destroy us. I'm a black woman who got torn apart for one mistake. I can't let that touch Ezra or this baby." His jaw tightened, his eyes glistening, his voice fierce. "You think I'd let that happen?" he said, stepping closer, his presence a storm. "I walked away from a shady deal, fought to fix my company. I'm not that man anymore, Lena. Let me prove it." The tense lanterns flickered, the jazz band's saxophone a soft wail, and Lena felt it a pull, a fire she couldn't douse. She stood, her heart pounding, her voice trembling. "I love you, Elliot," she said, her gaze locked on his, the words spilling out. "But love ain't enough. Your world's a cage and I won't trap my kids in it." His face crumpled, his hand reaching for hers, but she stepped back, her tears falling. "Lena," he said, his voice raw, "you're my home. You, Ezra, this baby, you're everything." The fair's music swelled, Ezra's laughter, a quiet anchor, and Lena's resolve cracked love and fear tearing her apart. She grabbed Ezra's hand, her sneakers scuffing the grass, and fled to Forsyth Park, the oak's moss swaying the lanterns, blurring through her tears. Under a massive oak, its branches heavy with Spanish moss, Lena stood with Ezra asleep in her arms, the park's quiet wrapping around them like a cocoon. The jazz band's melody drifted soft and mournful, the magnolia scent sweet and heavy. Elliot followed, his boots crunching on the path, his hazel eyes soft but fierce. "Lena," he said, stopping a few feet away, his voice low, pleading. "Don't do this. Don't run again." Her tears fell, her voice trembling. "I'm not running from you," she said, her gaze meeting his, her sundress swaying in the breeze. "I'm running from what comes with you headlines, judgment, a world that'll tear us apart." He stepped closer, his hand cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing her tears, slow and deliberate. "I'll protect you," he said, his voice rough, reverent. "I'll burn it all down for you, Lena. For us." The lanterns' glow painted their skin in gold, the saxophones' wail blending with their breaths, and Lena leaned in, or maybe he did, and their lips met, a spark igniting into a blaze. The kiss was soft, desperate tasting of magnolia and salt, the moss swaying above like a curtain. Her hands slid up his chest, feeling his heartbeat while his fingers tangled in her braids, pulling her closer. The park's quiet hummed the night wrapping around them, and she melted, her body aching, the world narrowing to his touch, his cedar scent, the way he whispered her name. They sank to the grass, Ezra asleep nearby, his blanket soft, the oak's shade, a sanctuary. His lips trailed to her jaw, her neck, each kiss a vow, and she arched into him, her nails digging into his shoulders, the magnolia's sweetness, a heady fog. "Lena," he breathed, his voice a low growl, and she pulled him closer. The jazz, a distant pulse, her heart screaming to stay, but her mind clawing to run. Fear Vanessa's threats, Marla's warnings, the baby's future cut through the haze. She pulled back her chest, heaving her eyes wet. "I can't," she gasped, standing, her lips tingling. "I love you, Elliot, but I need more than promises." His face shattered, his hands falling, his voice breaking. "I'm all in," he said, his eyes pleading. "Give me a chance. Lena, for Ezra, for us." She shook her head, tears falling, her heart tearing. "I need you to be free," she said, her voice trembling. "Free from your world, or I'm out." She scooped up Ezra, his warmth a lifeline, and walked away. The park's lanterns fading. Elliot's shadow, a wound she couldn't heal. Back at her Savannah apartment, Lena tucked Ezra into bed, his gray-blue eyes soft with sleep, his toy truck clutched tight. Her phone buzzed a text from Dr. "Mia Torres, girl. Vance is a mess. Jada sent me files proof he's legit. Don't let fear win." Lena opened her laptop, her hands shaking, and found Jada's latest email. Doc showing Elliot's reforms, his fight to make healthcare fair. He was changing, but was it enough? Another text from Marla Lena. "Come home. Ezra needs a father, and Caleb's family." Lena's heart sank, but a final text from Jada lit a spark. "Vance is headed to Minneapolis for a charity gala. Vanessa's planning to bury you. Get there." Lena's resolve hardened the ring, a vow she wasn't ready to break. Savannah had torn her open, but Minneapolis would test her, and Lena was ready to fight for Ezra, for the baby, for the love she couldn't outrun. Nicolette Mall shimmered under Minneapolis's night sky, a dazzling strip of string lights and neon signs, the air thick with the scent of cornbread and roasted pecans from food trucks lining the street. The Hope Care Foundation Gala, a charity Lena Harper had poured her heart into for free heart screenings, thrummed with life. The crowd, a mix of doctors, donors, and community activists, their chatter blending with the soul band's velvet rendition of Marvin Gaye. Lena stood backstage at the outdoor venue, her emerald gown hugging her curves, her braids swept into an elegant updo, her deep brown skin catching the stage lights. At 35, she was a doctor who'd risen from the ashes of a New York scandal, a mother to Ezra, and now visibly pregnant with Elliot Vance's child. But tonight her hands trembled, her heart pounding like a drum, the silver ring on her finger. A Missoula trinket felt lighter now, paired with a simple diamond band Elliot had offered in Savannah, a vow she'd almost broken. She'd run from him, scared of his world wealth power. A fiancée named Vanessa Langston. But Jada King's files proving Elliot's fight to reform his company had shifted her. In Savannah, she'd confessed her love, but left fearing his world would cage her. Now in Minneapolis with Ezra, safe with her mom. Marla and Vanessa plotting to bury her past. Lena was done running. Tonight was her fight for her kids, her future, and the man she loved. Her phone buzzed a text from Dr. Mia Torres, her Missoula lifeline. "Yo, Harper, Vance is front row, looking like he's ready to burn it down for you. Slay, sis." Lena's lips twitched, but her stomach knotted. Another text from Dr. Caleb Morris. "Got your back. Lena, Ezra's good with Marla. Face that storm." Lena's heart swelled. Caleb's steady support, a rock she'd always leaned on, even if he wasn't her fire. The stage manager waved her on, and Lena stepped into the spotlight. The crowd's roar, a tidal wave. The band's soul groove pulsing like a heartbeat. "Minneapolis. This is for us," she said, her voice clear, commanding. "The Hope Care Foundation is our promise to every heart, every community. No one left behind." The applause was thunder, but a shadow moved in the crowd. Vanessa Langston, her designer dress, sharp, her smile cold, flanked by a reporter with a camera. Beside her stood Raymond Vance, Elliot's father, his stern face unyielding. Lena's pulse spiked. Jada's warning echoing Vanessa's planning to bury you. This wasn't just a gala, it was a reckoning. The gala spilled onto Nicollet Mall, the street alive with food trucks and soul music. The Mississippi River's hum, a quiet undercurrent. Lena mingled, pitching the foundation, but her eyes kept drifting to Elliot, his tailored suit hugging his frame, his hazel eyes fierce but soft when they met hers. He was charming donors, but his gaze was her anchor, a silent, "I'm here." Vanessa's presence, though, was a dark cloud. Her reporter trailing like a vulture, Lena was grabbing a sweet tea from a vendor when Vanessa approached her, heels clicking, her voice smooth but venomous. "Dr. Harper," she said, her eyes glinting, "you're quite the star tonight. Shame, it's all built on lies." Lena's grip tightened on her glass, her jaw firm. "Keep it real." "Langston," she said, her voice low, sharp. "You're the one clinging to a man who doesn't want you. Don't come for me or my family." Vanessa's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. "Family," she said, stepping closer, her perfume sharp. "I've got proof headlines, lawsuits that'll drag your white coat killer past back into the light. You and your bastard kids don't belong in Elliot's world." Lena's blood boiled, but before she could fire back, Elliot appeared, his hand on her back, his voice cold. "Back off, Vanessa," he said, his hazel eyes blazing, his stance protective. "You're done here?" Vanessa laughed, a sharp mocking sound, and turned to the crowd, her voice carrying. "Ladies and gentlemen," she called the reporter's camera, flashing. "You're celebrating a fraud. Lena Harper's a failed surgeon, and Elliot Vance is using this foundation to dodge his company's scandals. They're not heroes. They're liars." The crowd murmured, phones raised, and Lena's heart pounded Vanessa's words, a twisted echo of the headlines that broke her in New York. She glanced at Elliot, his face pale but fierce, and felt a surge of fire. This was her fight, and she wasn't backing down. She stepped to the mic, her voice cutting through the chaos, clear and strong. "You done, Langston?" she said, her tone icy, her gaze locked on Vanessa's. "Because I'm not here for your lies." She turned to the crowd, her heart racing but her voice steady. "I'm Lena Harper, a black woman who's fought for every inch of my place. 5 years ago, I lost a patient, and the world called me a killer. I ran, hid, but I never stopped healing. This foundation isn't a scam. It's a promise to every heart that's been overlooked. And Elliot." She grabbed his hand, lifting it high, her eyes softening. "He's not perfect, but he's real, and he's fighting with me. No cap. We're building a future bigger than your hate." The crowd erupted cheers, shaking them all, some shouting her name, others clapping for Elliot, who stood taller, his grip on her hand. Fierce. Vanessa's smirk faltered, her reporter lowering the camera, and Raymond's stern face softened, a flicker of respect in his eyes. Lena seized the moment, her voice ringing. "This is for Minneapolis. For every soul who's been told they're not enough," she said, nodding to the band. The soul groove kicked in, rich and powerful, and Lena pulled Elliot to the stage, their anthem a song she'd written in St. Louis, pouring from her. "From ashes, we rise from shadows. We shine," she sang, her voice raw, soulful. Elliot's harmony, blending with hers. Their voices, a perfect union. Vanessa stood frozen, her reporter gone, and the crowd sang along their energy, a wave that drowned her out. As the song ended, Elliot pulled Lena into his arms, his lips brushing her forehead, his voice rough with pride. "You're a damn queen," He murmured, his arms tight around her, and she laughed, her heart full, her fears falling away. Later that night, they walked along the Mississippi River, the city's neon fading into the distance, the air cool with the scent of river water and pecans. Lena wore Elliot's jacket over her gown, her braids loose, her hand in his, the baby's gentle kick, a quiet reminder of their future. Elliot's boots scuffed the path, his hazel eyes soft under the moonlight. "You slayed tonight," he said, his voice low, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "Vanessa's done, the foundation's funded, and Ezra's safe. We're unstoppable, Lena." She smiled, her heart swelling, her eyes on the river's glint. "We're a team," she said, her voice firm, "but I was scared. Elliot, scared your world would break us." He stopped, turning her to face him, his hands cupping her face, his gaze unwavering. "My world's nothing without you," he said, his voice rough, reverent. "You, Ezra, this baby, you're my home. Marry me." Lena. Her breath caught tears prickling the rings on her finger. Missoula's trinket and Savannah's diamond suddenly weightless. "You sure you can handle all this fire, Vance?" she teased, her voice trembling, her hands on his chest. He grinned, that lazy, heart-stopping smile, his eyes shining. "Try me, Harper," he said, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was slow, deep, healing. The moonlight bathed them in silver, the river's hum matching their pulse, his hands sliding under the jacket, tracing her spine. Each touch a spark, her fingers tangled in his hair, her breath hot against his lips, the kiss deepening a dance of love and trust. The night their witness. They pulled back breathless, and Lena laughed, the sound free, unguarded. "Yes," she said, her voice steady, her heart full. "I'll marry you." Elliot's face lit up, his hand cupping her cheek, his thumb wiping her tears. "No, Cap. You're stuck with me now." He teased, his voice thick, and she laughed again. The river's song, a vow. The next day, Lena sat in the clinic's break room, Ezra coloring nearby, the scent of coffee. Sharp. Dr. Caleb Morris burst in, his grin wide, a new lightness in his step. "Yo, Lena, you killed it," he said, hugging her, his voice warm. "And I met someone, a nurse from uptown." "I'm good, sis." Lena's heart swelled. Caleb's happiness a gift. "Keep it 100. "Morris," she teased, her eyes soft. "She better be fire," he laughed, ruffling Ezra's curls, his gaze steady. "Not like you," he said, his voice low. "But she's home," Dr. Mia Torres called, her voice crackling through the speaker. "Harper, you're a legend," she said, her Puerto Rican accent warm. "Vance is all in, and Vanessa's out. But watch Raymond. He's still a snake." Lena's smile faded, her eyes on Ezra. The ring, a vow, a text from Jada King confirmed it. "Raymond's at the next gala, planning to block your foundation. Be ready." Lena's resolve hardened her hand, brushing her stomach. Elliot joined her, his arm around her, his voice firm. "We'll face him together," he said, his gaze fierce. "You, me, Ezra, this baby, we're unstoppable." She nodded, her heart racing, the rings a promise they'd keep. Minneapolis had forged them, but the next gala would test them, and Lena was ready to burn bright for her family. Her love, her future. Lake Harriet sparkled under Minneapolis's moonlit sky, its waters reflecting a canopy of stars, the air alive with the scent of wildflowers and grilled corn from a nearby festival. The Hope Care Foundation Gala, a charity Lena Harper and Elliot Vance had built to fund free heart screenings for underserved communities, was a radiant affair with string lanterns swaying over outdoor tents, a soul band's velvet cover of Etta James pulsing through the crowd. Lena stood on a makeshift stage, her deep burgundy gown flowing over her pregnant belly, her braids cascading in soft waves, her brown skin glowing under the lights. At 35, she was a doctor who'd risen from New York's ashes, a mother to Ezra and a partner to Elliot, her fire forged in storms, but tonight her hands steadied her heart, a fierce drumbeat of love and resolve, the silver ring on her finger. A Missoula trinket sat beside a diamond band, vows she'd sealed with Elliot in Minneapolis's Riverlight. They'd faced Vanessa Langston's venom, her threats to unearth Lena's past, and now with Ezra safe with Lena's mom. Marla, they stood ready for their final fight. Jada King's warning lingered. Raymond Vance is here planning to block your foundation. Elliot's father, a ruthless tycoon, loomed as their last hurdle, and Lena knew this gala wasn't just a celebration. It was a battlefield for their family, their future. Elliot stood beside her, his tailored suit, sharp, his hazel eyes fierce but soft. When they met hers, his hand brushing hers like an anchor. "You ready, Queen?" he asked, his voice low, his drawl a melody that steadied her. Lena grinned, her nerves sparking with fire. "Born ready, Vance," she said, her voice steady, fierce. "Let's burn this place down." He chuckled, leaning in to kiss her temple, his lips warm against her skin. "That's my girl," he murmured, and her heart swelled. Their love, a flame that had weathered every storm. The crowd roared as Lena stepped to the mic, the lake's shimmer framing her, the band's soul groove a heartbeat in the night. "Minneapolis, this is for us," she said, her voice ringing, commanding. "The Hope Care Foundation is our fight for every heart, every community, no one left behind." The applause was thunder, but a shadow moved Vanessa Langston, her designer dress gleaming, her smile cold, standing beside Raymond Vance, his stern face unyielding. A reporter trailing them. Lena's pulse spiked, but she held her ground, her eyes on Elliot, his grip on her hand. A vow. The gala spilled across Lake Harriet's shores, the festival's energy pulsing with soul music and laughter, the wildflower scent mingling with buttery corn. Lena mingled, pitching the foundation, but her eyes tracked Vanessa and Raymond, their presence, a storm cloud. Elliot was across the lawn, charming donors, but his gaze was her lighthouse, a silent, "We got this." Vanessa's reporter, though, was a vulture, her camera flashing, and Lena knew time was running out. She was grabbing a plate of cornbread from a food truck when Vanessa approached her heels, sinking into the grass, her voice smooth but venomous. "Dr. Harper," she said, her eyes glinting, "you're playing a dangerous game. This foundation won't survive when I drag your past into the light." Lena's grip tightened on her plate, her jaw firm. "No cap." "Langston," she said, her voice low, sharp. "You're the one clinging to a man who's done with you. Step off, or I'll show you what fire looks like." Vanessa's smile sharpened, but Raymond stepped forward, his voice cold, authoritative. "Enough," he said, his eyes hard on Lena. "You're a liability. Ms. Harper, your scandal, your children, they don't belong in the Vance legacy." Lena's blood boiled, but before she could fire back, Elliot appeared, his hand on her waist, his voice icy. "You don't get to decide our legacy, Dad," he said, his hazel eyes blazing. "Lena's my home, and so are our kids. You're done here." Raymond's face hardened, but Vanessa seized the moment, turning to the crowd, her voice carrying. "Ladies and gentlemen," she called, the reporter's camera rolling. "You're funding a fraud. Lena Harper's a failed surgeon, and Elliot Vance is hiding behind her to dodge his company's scandals. They're not heroes. They're liars." The crowd murmured, phones raised, and Lena's heart pounded Vanessa's words, a twisted echo of New York's headlines. She glanced at Elliot, his face fierce, his hand steady in hers, and felt a surge of fire. This was their fight, and she was done hiding. She stepped to the mic, her voice cutting through the chaos, clear and unyielding. "You done, Langston?" she said, her tone icy, her gaze locked on Vanessa's. "Because I'm not here for your lies." She turned to the crowd, her heart racing, but her voice strong. "I'm Lena Harper, a black woman who's fought for every inch of my place. 5 years ago I lost a patient, and the world called me a killer. I hid, but I never stopped healing. This foundation isn't a scam. It's a promise to every heart that's been overlooked. And Elliot." She pulled him close, her eyes softening his hand warm in hers. "He's not perfect, but he's real, and he's my partner in this fight. Keep it 100. We're building a future bigger than your hate." The crowd erupted cheers, shaking the lake, some shouting her name, others clapping for Elliot, who stood taller, his grip fierce. Vanessa's smirk vanished, her reporter lowering the camera, and Raymond's stern face faltered, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Lena pushed forward, her voice soaring. "This is for Minneapolis, for every soul who's been told they're not enough," she said, nodding to the band. The soul groove roared, a powerful anthem Lena had written in Savannah, and she sang, her voice raw, soulful, Elliot's harmony weaving with hers. "From ashes we rise, from shadows we shine." Vanessa stood frozen, Raymond's face softening, and the crowd joined in their voices, a wave that drowned out the hate. As the song ended, Elliot pulled Lena into his arms, his lips crashing against hers in a kiss that was victory and vow. The crowd screamed. The lanterns flashed, and Lena laughed against his mouth, her heart full. "Your trouble, Vance," she murmured, her voice thick, her hands on his chest. "Only for you, Harper." He grinned, his eyes shining, his arms tight. The lake's shimmer wrapped them, the music a heartbeat. And Lena knew they'd won, not just against Vanessa and Raymond, but for their love, their family. Later that night, they escaped to their garden in a Minneapolis suburb, the moon high, the air cool with wildflowers, and the distant hum of Lake Harriet. Lena wore Elliot's flannel over her gown, her braids loose, her bare feet in the grass, the baby's gentle kick, a quiet promise. Elliot spread a blanket under a willow tree, his boots off his grin, boyish, under the starlight. "We did it," Lena said, her voice soft, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear. Vanessa's out. Raymond's backing off and the foundation's soaring. Elliot's fingers traced her arm, his touch, warm, grounding. "You did it," he said, his voice low, reverent. "You're a force." Lena always were. She turned to face him, propping herself on her elbow, her eyes searching his. "We're a force," she said, her voice firm. "You and me, Elliot. No more running. No more secrets. We're in this, all the way," he nodded, his eyes shining, and pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was slow, deep, eternal. The moonlight bathed them in silver, the willow's branches swaying their bodies pressed together warm against the cool grass. His hands slid under the flannel, tracing her curves, each touch a spark that set her alight, her fingers tangled in his hair, her breath hot against his lips, the kiss deepening a dance of love and trust. The night their sanctuary, the wildflower's sweetness mingled with his cedar scent, the lake's hum a soft lullaby, and Lena melted her heart full, her fears gone. They pulled back breathless, and Lena laughed, the sound free, unguarded. "You're still trouble, Vance." She teased, her voice thick, her hand on his chest. "Only for you, Harper," he murmured, his grin, lazy, heart-stopping. He rolled her beneath him, the blanket soft, the stars their crown. "I love you," he whispered, his voice rough, sacred, and she felt it in her bones, a truth that anchored her. "I love you too," she said, her voice steady, her hands framing his face. They kissed again, slower, the world fading to just them. The lake's song, their vow. A year later, Lena stood on the porch of their Minneapolis home, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in pinks and golds. Ezra, now 5, chased fireflies in the yard, his gray-blue eyes sparkling while their newborn daughter Amara cooed in Lena's arms, her tiny braids peeking from a blanket. The Hope Care Foundation was thriving with clinics across the Midwest, and Lena's music, soulful anthems, born in St. Louis, was streaming everywhere. A testament to her fire, Marla visited often, her lectures replaced by pride, her eyes soft when she watched Elliot with Amara teaching Ezra to catch fireflies. Dr. Caleb Morris had found love, a nurse who matched his heart, and he'd stood as best man at their wedding, his smile a quiet blessing. Dr. Mia Torres was Amara's godmother, her humor a constant light, and Jada King had published a story exposing Vanessa's schemes, burying her for good. Raymond Vance, softened by Ezra's laughter, had funded a wing of the foundation, a quiet apology. Lena leaned against Elliot, his arm around her, the sunset warm on their faces. "We made it," she said, her voice soft, her eyes on Ezra and Amara, who giggled together. "We're just getting started," he replied, his lips brushing her temple, his voice a promise. Lena smiled, the rings on her finger, Missoula's trinket and Minneapolis's diamond. A vow they'd kept. They'd risen from ashes, shone through storms, and built a family that was theirs, fierce and true. As Ezra's laughter rang out, the wildflowers swaying, Lena knew no matter what came next, their love would burn forever. Thank you for joining us on this blazing journey with Rhythm of the Storm. If Lena and Elliot's love lit a spark in you, hit that like button. Subscribe to Soul Stories and drop a comment to share your favorite moment. What's the love story that inspires you? Let's keep the fire alive, spreading hope and heart with every tale. Thank you for being our family,